Hi, it's Joy, and today we're watching The Acolyte, Season 1, Episode 7, Choice. This is the penultimate episode. I am stressed. I am excited. A reminder that you can find the unedited version of this reaction on my Patreon, and let's go. Are we going to find out what actually happened? So they're like surveying the land for resources or something? They weren't even looking for Force-sensitive children. Not exactly the most riveting Jedi mission at the start. And probably one of the most traumatic ones by the end.
A concentration of Force energy centered around a location.
A virgins could create life, like what we see on this planet.
I mean, he should know what he's here for.
It should be studied.
Is it to do with the girls? Were they virgins?
I teach him to seek the answers for himself. You disagree?
Two very different Jedi styles.
That's...
So we're going to see what happened from his point of view. Ooh.
Ask the council for guidance.
I fear for the girl's safety. The witches prepare for a ceremony tonight.
I mean, given what he saw one witch kind of being like, come inside, it's not safe for you to be outside, and then like them being attacked in the training. Like, I can understand why he'd be concerned. He didn't see the softer sides of things, though it was also a pretty brutal upbringing regardless. And then yeah, the ceremony, when you've heard stories of these kind of people, you wouldn't know what it would mean. And like, I think the ceremony was just them joining the coven, but I think there was also a greater significance to it.
What?
We're seeing his point of view.
Your master denies you.
So is this the start of what happened? Like he acts erratically because she got in his head?
I would always let you.
I feel a connection to Osha.
So, testing the twins is not something we can take seriously. Osha's too old to join the order.
Fascinating.
She's meant to be my...
Ceremonial markings are customary in many cultures in the galaxy.
But Osha did not have one.
So are they like allowed to practice using the Force? Just not like, I'm very intrigued about what the laws are here, because they kind of treated them like you're not like criminals, you're under arrest or anything. But they just had, if the children were Jedi, they'd take them. It's interesting. Or Force users.
She's not safe.
Mama said everyone must walk through fear. Everyone must be sacrificed to fulfill their destiny.
Okay, what did that mean? So
Thank you for explaining that to me.
Was the plan to kill the girls? To gain some kind of superior power?
Courage to tell the truth.
We should continue the test.
So I'm guessing the Jedi were always trying to push Osha out. The evil master guy wasn't wrong. Because she didn't even want to join.
I will meet you at the camp when I hear their answer.
He's already attached. Because that's the thing that happens to people and can't be stopped.
They say that we have interfered too much already.
Will they let us come home at least?
No.
Let me talk to the council.
What's he gonna do?
Do not alter this little girl's destiny because you have formed an emotional attachment.
Okay, so in this instance, they were like, we know they're Force sensitive, we know they're with Force sensitive witches, but they're not doing any harm, we'll just leave them alone. So you are allowed to practice the Force in a different way if you want to. You are allowed to train children in the Force if you want to, right? That's what they're saying here? Or is it just because the girls are too old, it would be a hassle, so they'll just be like, oh, we'll keep an eye on them, they won't do anything. I'm sorry, I thought like they were against anyone using the Force.
Not what's happening here.
Their symbionts are the same.
They are twins.
No, exactly the same.
They're the
Even identical
virgins.
twins would have different symbionts. This is it.
Hogan! Stop!
Proof of the virgins, and those girls are the proof. This is our ticket home.
How did this boy make it to this rank of being a Jedi Padawan or out on missions? Like, genuinely, he's terrible. He's worse than any Padawan I've ever seen. Like, I get it, I would hate this mission too, but sometimes being a Jedi, especially in an age of peace, means going and doing boring things like this. Going off by yourself to try and kidnap 2 kids is not going to be the answer. No wonder he spends his life in meditation, regretting his actions. And no wonder he was so willing to die. what happens on the walk, if anything.
Good girl. Get mad.
Jesus Christ. So yep, I knew Mother Pearl had set her off on it.
It's not her decision to make.
But is it ours? You cannot allow Osha to go. She has chosen it.
Good
It's
mother.
what she wants.
What was May's plan here? What happened?
Prepare for.
She didn't mean to light it.
What are you doing?
Okay, so she was a little bit transfixed by the flames. Maybe wanted to burn the book, but then realized it had caught. She didn't start the fire intentionally. She wasn't trying to burn Osha alive, because that never made sense to me that May would suddenly be like, you can't leave me, but I will kill you, and then seem to still care about her in the future. So it was genuinely, she wasn't really thinking. She was all amped up on adrenaline, and they want to take me away, that Osha wants to leave, I can't let her leave. She didn't mean to start the fire. Probably guilt for that, her evil master was able to tap into. I'm glad we get to see she didn't start it intentionally like it had seemed.
Someday those noble intentions you all have will destroy every Jedi in the galaxy.
She's not wrong.
Help me.
Just going to let Osha go.
Yeah.
It's what she wants.
No! Mama!
So, when she did that, obviously it looked threatening, especially because May ceased to exist. Like, I'm concerned was always somehow, I don't know. I don't think it's the way the mother talks about them. She doesn't talk about them like someone who was planning to sacrifice them in 20 minutes. I don't know. I guess kind of whatever she was planning to do, I don't think he needed to kill her. But I get why he thought things were escalating that way. All escalated because he wanted to go home. Like, things were escalating anyway.
Fight me!
He regrets what he did. Do you remember how May came running in saying, "Mama, fire!" That's what their mother was planning to do. The rest are all
What's
gone.
happening again? My mind is fortified.
Not you.
Oh dear. Oh dear. They're just gonna sit and let themselves die in a fire so they can stop some Jedi? Like, find your children and run, women. Kind of explains why Kalnaka and the Padawan were the two that kind of withdrew. Whereas Sol and the woman whose name I can't remember, stayed kind of more active. How did Kalnaka snap out of it? Or did they injure him enough to make him stop? Or did the women all die because they didn't run? Fuck, she did kill them all. To save him.
Get them now. Now!
Yep. Everything has gone to shit. You know, she doesn't feel good about the mass murders she just committed. It's even more brutal when you see what a mess it was from the Jedi side. I'd always suspected May didn't kill everyone, but
We're going home.
he got what he wanted.
Not to interfere.
Master! Master!
Yeah. She feels what she had to do. So does he.
We will tell the council the truth.
She's
They burned down the
yeah,
witch's
she's immediately going
fortress.
to lie.
I must face the council.
Why would you do that to her? After everything this little girl has lost tonight, you take away her dream as well? Before you throw yourself at the mercy of the council.
So they lie. I mean, they lie for Osha. But I do have to think, her name's Indara. It came back to me. That, like, she also lied a little bit for herself because she didn't do a very good job of leading this mission. And, like, a lot of people are dead because of it. And there's a little bit of self-preservation for all of them involved because they'd all get in severe trouble. She has a point with Osha that obviously, like, if you tell the truth about her being a virgin and also about everything that happened, it won't go as smoothly for Osha. She won't have him to guide her. But telling her that her little sister, her twin sister, tried to kill her and killed everybody else didn't exactly give her the best, healthy frame of mind going forward, especially when it's not what happened. I mean, I know they just know May was running around saying she was afraid, like, Mom, help, there's a fire. She didn't say, I did it by accident or anything, but it just, no wonder Osha wasn't able to get over it all because it wasn't true, and you can kind of see almost Saul not being able to help guide her through the pain because he knows he's lying to her every single time he does. These two little girls are brilliant actresses.
What happened?
And also they did assume May couldn't have survived. Did they look for her? That's all.
They started a fire.
I know why, well, that's the end. I know why they did what they did, but I also think making her think her twin sister killed her entire family and tried to kill her probably wasn't the best solution. May started a fire and, we did hear her saying she didn't mean to, but it killed everyone. At least then she doesn't have to harbor the same level of, like, my sister is secretly evil in her heart. Like, I don't think an accident is, I mean, there was a little arson, but it was ultimately an accident. Like, I don't think that would be easy for her to get over, but it would be easier than this version of the truth. So we finally know what happened, and we finally get to see that, yes, indeed, it was a shit show on behalf of the Jedi. Now, an interesting thing is, did we see Mother Pearl's body? I think we must have done. I think she was with the rest of the women. Regardless, May's hatred of the Jedi and thinking that they did this. I suppose, I mean, even just looking at it from her point of view, they came and ruined and tried to take away her and her sister. They warped her sister's mind so she'd want to leave. May believed Osha also died. Not entirely sure why she believed Osha was definitely dead and hadn't just gone with the Jedi, seeing as she knew the Jedi had survived. But I guess she assumed they both fell and Osha died. I've no idea, obviously, when she found her master or anything, but she watched Saul murder her mother. Like, I get why she hated the Jedi, and I get why that rage was so easy for an evil Sith-leaning person to tap into and to warp. And her having not intentionally started the fire completely explains why, maybe she was drawn to fire, maybe she had tendencies to the dark side, but she didn't do it intentionally. And telling Osha that she did is a huge betrayal of the love those sisters once had for each other, and still do to a degree. Like, Osha still thinks May started the fire. And obviously, I guess if you tell her, oh yeah, we the Jedi killed your entire coven, like, I personally killed your mum, and then, like, she killed the rest, Osha's probably gonna be like, I don't want to be a Jedi anymore. So I understand wanting to do it to protect her, but I do still think, even if they're not consciously aware of it, there is a degree of subconscious self-protection. Though, given that they assumed May was dead, I would have liked to have, like, I searched the wreckage, I didn't find any sign of her or something. Though I assume it was just so destroyed, they thought there was no way anyone could survive. I guess? Like, none of the witches died from the fire, so they knew they were all gone. What interested me the most, and has done since we first kind of saw the first flashback, is that these witches existing as a Force cult the Jedi were just okay with it. Like, obviously they were a bit wary of them and afraid of them. They weren't like, whoop, love them. But they weren't going to kind of shut them down or stop them. The Jedi were like, yep, there is a cult of witches and that's fine. And even when they saw they were training children, they were still like, yep, that's fine. So what on earth is Master Sith Lord Jason going on about when he's like, they won't let me do the Force my way? If you just don't hurt anybody and keep to yourself, they're quite okay with it. And by keep to yourself, I mean, like, don't go around, like, conquering planets. Like, it was only when they thought the girls could be, well, they figured out the girls were virgins. I don't fully understand what that is, but, I mean, and they tapped into the Source to kind of make them. It's different to what happened with Anakin. They tapped into the Source of the Force, not the Source, the Force to make them somehow. And so that's why they're super powerful, and it's probably a very dangerous thing to do. And we still don't entirely know what the witch's endgame was, whether it was just to have young blood to continue the coven, but then they're going to need to recruit young women otherwise. They're just going to end up with, like, Osha and May and a coven of no one. Once they figured out it was a significant incident, they needed to get the children. But I also don't think they would have gone rushing into the place if the Padawan had not been desperate to go home. Now, it's interesting because their mother's manipulation of the Padawan, their mother's getting in Torben, was that his name? Getting into his head and manipulating him and playing on his desperate desire to go home, making him really say, I want to go back. And, like, he might not have been quite so jumpy to act on it. If she hadn't done that and none of this could have happened, it could have all gone down in a very different way. So it is really interesting when you look at kind of, she did that to try and protect her family, but ultimately it was one of the things that led a domino effect to them going. Also, Mother Pearl, if she hadn't gone all, I'm gonna tell May, stop your sister from leaving, May wouldn't have been locking the door and accidentally starting a fire. Like, she wanted to burn Osha's notebook, and then she was like, oh no, I have a giant burning notebook. That wouldn't have happened if she didn't get all the other witches ready with their weapons at the ready and draw on the Jedi. It wouldn't have escalated. That doesn't mean it all would have ended well, but it wouldn't have escalated in the way it did. And I think it's particularly interesting that their mother seemed to genuinely choose her children's well-being over her duties as the coven leader. Whereas the rest of them were like, no, coven first. And so that moment when she made them all disappear, was it her goal? Because it seems like maybe if you're the head of the coven or something, or if you're really powerful in that coven, you could just move everybody to a different location, right? Like, so that what she was trying to do was grab May and grab the rest of the witches and take them away to de-escalate, because the situation was escalating. But in that moment, because Pearl was getting, like, violent, and it looked like maybe the head would as well, and when he saw the little girl, he called her Osha. He thought it was Osha, even though they're not identical and you can quite clearly tell them apart. I suppose he hasn't spent very much time with them. They're identical when they grow up, but they weren't identical when they were younger. They're fantastic little actresses, though. But he assumed it was Osha and assumed she was taking Osha, so Osha couldn't go with them and that she was part of it. I guess that's why he stabbed her. And then when he realized it was May, like when she said, I was going to let Osha go with you, and then he saw that the little girl was May, he was like, oh fuck, I've just made this 1,000 times worse. So it's interesting because both sides are at fault for it. In some ways, the Jedi's rhetoric is at fault, but so is the witches. You know, Osha wanted to go, Osha wanted to leave, and the Jedi, you can leave the Jedi. So if in 10 years, I mean, as we know, she did end up leaving the Jedi, but if she had gone into the Jedi and then realized, no, I miss home, there probably was an avenue for her to return. Given that they were virgins, I don't quite know. So it really was a huge mess with these two little girls at the center of it. And I do think Indara was looking out for the girls when she was saying, like, ripping away from their family and showing, like, we can't just come in here and interfere. But it still strikes me as so fascinating, because does that mean across the galaxy, the Jedi would turn up to a home and say, your kid's Force sensitive, give it to us, and people could say no, and then just raise their Force sensitive child themselves? Was that okay? Yeah, like with the Padawan, she said, oh, your parents were really poor, like paupers or whatever. So, like, I could see those parents thinking, well, he'll have food, he'll have a bed, he'll have clothes, but and making that sacrifice. But there would be other parents who would think being with me, being with family that love him, getting one day to have a family of his own if he chooses, that is more important and wanting that for their child. So are there people who said no to the Jedi? and was it allowed? And those people who the Jedi didn't take, if they exist, were they then allowed to grow up and learn to use the Force by themselves? It's just so fascinating. Because it's kind of different, like it's different to how I initially thought it was, or how the Jedi often come across. But at the same time, Osha so desperately clearly wanted to go. And I know she's too old to be a Padawan, and that has often caused problems, but she didn't, she wanted to go. Yes, she initially was pretending to fake the test, to fail the test, but that was because of peer pressure from her mum rather than the other way around. I almost feel like with Osha, they should have been like, we'll come back in a month and see if she still wants to go or something. I don't know, but like, I think Sol wanting to save her, Sol's desperation, I mean, no one really knew what was going on. When May described how people have to sacrifice to get where they're going, that does sound ominous. So I understand why everyone did what they did, but it's quite interesting because it feels like almost Sol wanted a Padawan. He saw a Force-sensitive child and he went, that one, I'm having that one. But I also feel like he had a connection. Like, there are sometimes people in your life that you meet and you're like, I really, like, that's someone that I care about. Like, that is someone that matters to me. And it can be someone that is in your life for a really short period of time, like a kid in a class you teach, and then they move on, and you know, you don't then abduct them and make them your own. But in this circumstance, it's just so fascinating because you can see why everyone was doing what they were doing, sorry, and they also didn't demonize anybody involved. Mother Pearl is the closest to being demonized, but even she, you know, she gave birth to these children. She believes in the Covenant, believes in whatever they're doing, and she didn't want to give them up. Like, you can understand why everybody did what they did. And at the end of the day, Osha and May were the two that were irrevocably hurt by it. Now, obviously, the Covenant were all dead, but Osha and May were these two innocent children caught in the middle of all of this. Things just kept escalating on both sides. Whether it was Sol's burning desire to get Osha, because he thought he was helping her, he wasn't being selfish intentionally, or whether it was the Covenant's desire to keep hold of them. A sit down and a conversation between the mother, the head of the Coven, and the Jedi would have been like 1,000 times more useful. Now, once they knew about the Vergence, there is a chance that the mother would have been like, okay, that's bad, because I don't know whether the Jedi would like stop a human Vergence, but so seeing what happened was fascinating and even more heartbreaking. And then when you think of May, you know, however I kind of wish we saw how she survived at the end. Like, I kind of would have liked if the final scene was her surviving, because she was alone on that planet, right? Like, unless Mother Pearl whooshed off into the ether, she was alone on an uninhabited planet. How did a Sith Master find her? Did he sense all of this shenaniganing in the Force and be like, I want a paddle, I want an acolyte, do. Was he there the whole time waiting to snatch one of them? Like, I would have found it interesting to find out that side of the story. Maybe he will explain it to Osha in the next one, but whatever version he says with his words will be one that makes him look like a misunderstood person rather than the truth. But you think of May, who all the trauma she was going through, you know, it's not her fault that she believed in what her mother taught her and that way of life and Osha didn't. It's not, she doesn't have the right to stop Osha from pursuing other things, but it isn't her fault, and she was so small. It breaks my heart for her all over again. And when you think of the path she went down and the life she has lived, it's even more heartbreaking. And I genuinely do fault the Jedi for not looking for her. Like, yeah, they saw the witches' bodies, so they knew they were dead, and then they were like, May's dead. Like, did they look for her? Did they try? Did they double check? Like, yes, get Osha to safety, but then when she's safely in the ship, go back and look for May. But then if May is dead, that's a lot more convenient for them, because she is the one that saw that the Jedi did some fighting and did some killing. So, like, it's just so interesting because neither side was right and neither side was wrong. And so often in conflicts and so often in situations, that is the case. You do have circumstances where one side is evil and one side is good, and it's black and white, but most of the time there is that grey area on both sides. This was a truly heartbreaking and fascinating look into the mess of what happened, and it explains why Kalnaka and Torben, the Padawan, ended up kind of living solitary lives, whether it was the Padawan growing into a master and then just meditating and just kind of, I guess, trying to atone for his role in it and for having the witch in his head, and similarly with Kalnaka wanting to be apart from things because of what happened with him. It also explains Sol's commitment to teaching younglings and trying to kind of make things right. Indara, she died very quickly. I didn't really get much of a sense of how she felt about things. So it's all very fascinating, and I'm extremely intrigued. Fantastic episode. A reminder that you can find the unedited version of this reaction on my Patreon, and thank you so much for watching.